We quietly trailed behind the woman as she made her way through deserted cobblestone streets. We observed her calculated movements as she headed towards the Dead Tree Bank's outside ATM. Finally, her demeanor shifted like a chameleon from timid mouse to formidable wildcat under the glow of the machine's light. Gone was the seemingly harmless appearance of the older woman as a chill ran down our spines at the sight of her icy expression. "Whoa!" Josh gasped at her gaunt, intimidating face. Our prey nonchalantly cast wary glances around her as she swiftly completed her transaction and pocketed her card and cash. We froze in the shadows of a building, and she seemed to look directly at us. However, within an instant she turned and casually began walking back the way she came. Had she seen us? I wasn't sure. We discreetly followed her for several blocks past the Golden Rooster and nondescript commercial office buildings as she continued on her solitary journey through these empty streets. She approached an unrefined hilly road and quickly began her ascent as Josh and I lagged further behind, strategizing our next move. We were at the intersection of Old Hill Road and Main Street. My instincts screamed danger, but before I could voice my concerns, Josh had already slipped away to retrieve our van. Alone with the mysterious woman, I struggled to shake off the strong feeling of unease that gripped me. There was something extremely unsettling about our target, someone so seemingly vulnerable yet simultaneously formidable. Why was she out on her own, walking around with a pocket full of cash at this time of night? Distant rumbles filled the air and a mild, cool breeze picked up. I had no choice but to stick to the shadows and follow the strange woman up the hill with growing trepidation. I expected her to round on me at any moment, but she never did. Furthermore, she appeared to be in excellent physical shape for someone as old as she appeared. She was moving fast, not pausing once to catch her breath. I, on the other hand, found it difficult to keep up, and I had to stop and rest several times under the shade of sugar maple trees. The narrow street and sidewalks were paved with old bricks, and I struggled slightly with my footing on the uneven surfaces, my feet and knees beginning to ache. The pungent smell of orange hawkweed flowers and hawthorn bushes danced in the summer night air. I would quit smoking, eat better, and exercise more often after Josh and I finished this heist, I told myself. The steep road stretched on, winding its way up through the darkness until it leveled out, and I saw an old rusty metal sign announcing Dead Tree Historic District. The first home in the area stood to the right a block past the sign, an old looming 2-story brick Tudor-style estate that seemed to watch over the street like a disapproving giant. Its ornate brick exterior looked like the people who once owned it had a lot of money. But now it gave me the shivers with its vibe of abandonment and desolation. Soft candlelight flickered from a lone window on the first floor, casting eerie shadows against the darkness that enveloped the rest of the mansion. The imposing property was surrounded by overgrown boxwood hedges and exotic perennials, the lawn choked with weeds on either side of the estate. Ivy draped the exterior walls like a crime scene drop cloth, adding to the mansion's aura of neglect and dread. Our target quietly entered its yard through a fancy iron gate, soon disappearing behind a massive front door. Parked in this estate's front driveway was an awesome piece of eye candy. A shiny black '62 Lincoln Continental with suicide doors. Score. It sat in stark contrast to the seedy grandeur of the enormous house. Apparently, the old woman had maintained pride of ownership in her vehicle at least. I saw an opportunity in the property's overall state of neglect. I assumed that the woman lived a solitary existence within its decaying walls. Why else would she be out walking? Alone at night? Maybe she was senile. I skulked outside the property, making sure to remain hidden in the shadows. I pulled out a cigarette and lit it, my eyes drawn to the upstairs window where a light flickered to life. This was supposed to be a simple mugging, but if the woman lived all alone and had nobody to turn to, there was potential here for a bigger payoff, the biggest one we'd ever have. My mind whirled with the possibilities, lost in thought until Josh quietly pulled up next to me in the van. Was I that visible in the shadows? Nevertheless, I grinned at him. "I have a plan," Josh raised his bushy eyebrows, his curiosity piqued. We circled the block, taking note of access points that we could spot from the street. We returned to the front of the mansion and parked beneath a massive oak tree, hoping its unkempt branches and leaves would conceal our van from the old woman. After we settled in, a gentle rain began to fall and we found ourselves dozing off periodically when we should have been paying attention. Over the next few days, we observed the house, waiting to see if the woman ventured anywhere or if anyone paid her a visit. The rain stopped late in the afternoon of the second day. There was still no sign of activity, not even a delivery man. And the deserted nature of this part of Dead Tree only added to our luck, with boarded-up row houses surrounding the mansion. Josh and I took turns creeping out of the van and relieving ourselves behind a huge bush next to us. It grew on a narrow patch of land in front of a boarded-up single-family home. Our surveillance eventually confirmed our suspicions. The woman was alone and vulnerable in her otherwise empty home. Mapping out our strategy, we waited for the opportune moment to strike. On the third night, as all lights in the mansion were extinguished, Josh told me that he couldn't shake the feeling that the old woman had been steadily watching us from a second-story window. I didn't care one way or the other. She would have called the police if she suspected any criminal activity, but she hadn't. Tonight was the night. Our plan was simple: find our mark and incapacitate her before she did call for help. We crossed the wide street and crept onto the property from the left side of the expansive lawn, staying close to the deep shadows of a towering row of hedges. We wore black face masks, hoodies, and jeans. We agreed to split up. I would attempt to gain access into the mansion from the rear of the estate, while Josh would focus on getting in through a side window. With a brick from the garden, he smashed out a window pane on the downstairs level, quickly clearing away any shards before unlatching the frame and diving inside. In a matter of seconds, he was in that dark house. Wow. He had made considerable noise, but he was fast so again. We were lucky. He was supposed to make his way to the kitchen to cut the phone lines. I proceeded on my way towards the rear of the structure, and I scaled a side porch trellis to gain entry through a second-floor window. I slowly crept along the overhanging roof and found a window ajar, wide enough for me to slip inside. Once I got in, I quickly walked through the wide, dark hallways. A musty chemical and potpourri scent hung in the air. I held back a scream as my light fell upon walls decorated with several shrunken human heads, mounted within a swirl of colorful dried flowers. I stumbled backwards and hit my elbow against something hard. My eyes watering, I swiveled my flashlight around. There were stuffed and taxidermied animals wherever my beam landed. "Crazy old lady," I muttered to myself, my heart racing. I knew rich people went a bit nutty in their old age, but of all the things to hoard, taxidermy? Human skulls? I shuddered. Meanwhile, as Josh fumbled around the kitchen, his movements, careless and loud, alerted the old lady to his presence. He assumed that a petite, frail, elderly woman living alone in this great big house would run and hide from the first bump in the night. Boy, was he wrong.